What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stucky.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network, presented to you by Bet365. My name is Michael Lieboff, and joining me for another handicapping adventure through the English Premier League and beyond are Sam Ingram and BJ Cunningham. Together, the three of us are going to break down all 10 Premier League matches coming our way this weekend, do a little stroll through Europe. Sam will give out his best bet in the championship. Then we will hand out our three-leg underdog parlay this week, about 125 to 1. Give our favorite bets for the Premier League weekend, and then we'll get out of here and rest up for an international break. I think it's always the worst international break on the schedule because you just get it, your juices flowing, then all of a sudden off for 2 weeks. It's kind of sucks. But anyways, that's for next weekend. For this weekend, we got I think the best slate of the season so far through the three matches. I think it's a lot of fun. And that includes the match we'll start with, which is Manchester United and Liverpool on Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time, in the later afternoon over there for Sam. United is at home, and they are plus 275 right now at Bet365. Liverpool odds on minus 118. The draw is plus 300. Liverpool has passed the two early tests in the Arne Slot era with flying colors. They haven't given up more than They've given up 0.8 xG in the two matches combined. The quality of competition definitely needs to be noted here, BJ. But this is the kind of spot I like to back this United team. They're so weird. They can lose to anybody, but they showed last year like they might have this Liverpool's team number a little bit with a win and two draws. Odds on Liverpool on the road just seems like it's flattering them a little bit too much off a win against Ipswich and Brentford at home.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't go as far as United had their number last season. They definitely put in a couple of good performances, but the underlying numbers and all of their games were actually quite terrible.
Right, but first one they just had nobody.
Right,
remember we were talking about like they were literally diving into the academy.
And I think that's the interesting point here, Michael, is what does United do out of possession against Liverpool? Because Liverpool's much different now.
Park it.
Exactly. And that kind of leads me to my bet. I like over 16.5 shots, but I'll get to that in a second. United's press looked better against Brighton, especially for the first 60 or so minutes, I would say. But the thing is there's still some key core issues. Like they're pressing better than they did last season, but that's a very low bar to hurdle. There's still the easy outlet ball out wide that teams are just doing over and over and over again and just getting a 3v2 overload in a break. And that happens so many times against Brighton. If you go back and watch the first goal that Brighton scored, they had a 3v2 overload out wide. João Pedro had just a free cross with nobody pressuring him. Ball got through to Matoma, and then Brighton also had the 3v2 overload in the box. So United defensively still has a lot of issues. And if they park the bus again, that's going to lead to Liverpool getting a lot of chances. Liverpool, although they are not playing like they did under Klopp, they're playing with much more control, is the word I would use. They're building out of the back a lot more, three-man combinations. But what I love about what Arne Slot has done is he hasn't taken away the complete identity of what we've known for Liverpool for so long. If Liverpool has the opportunity to break and transition, they will do it. Because for my money, outside of maybe Real Madrid, Liverpool, when they were playing under Klopp, was the best transition team in the entire world. So if United, which the last 25 minutes against Brighton wants to get into a basketball type match with Liverpool, they're going to lose that time and time again. And they proved that last season because Liverpool, in the three meetings, twice in the Premier League and once in the FA Cup, Liverpool created a combined 10.3 expected goals and took 86 shots against Manchester United. So, I know Liverpool is acting for more control now. But what is interesting, and I think another angle on here is maybe playing Liverpool live at a better number, is slots teams at Feyenoord, and what we've seen through the first 2 matches here, it takes them about a half to not really figure teams out, but feel them out. They're not being as aggressive as going for it. At Feyenoord, their expected threat the expected threat created in total for the match, 60% of it at Feyenoord was in the second half, 39% was in the first half. So I think you potentially could play Liverpool at a better number in the second half as they wear United down, if United's going to play in that low defensive block. But either way, Liverpool's taking the most shots so far in the Premier League. So I think in combined 86 shots in 3 matches against United, I think over 16.5 is a decent bet.
Yeah, I like the price on United is me saying I'm taking this number, betting on them to park the bus and just do what they've been doing against Liverpool for the past calendar year, which I think could frustrate them. And United is going to be dangerous in transition. That's where they do their best work, Sam. So I'm happy to bet United in these spots. Like they're such a maddening team, I think, for supporters, and the way that they play actually helps me as a bettor because you can get them at a price like this and they will be a dangerous underdog against the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal, etc. Like still incredibly dangerous in transition. And I think sometimes like the pessimism around United seeps into the betting market. I feel like that's what's happening here.
Yeah, look, they had 2 draws in the Premier League last season, and in between that was a 4-3 United FA Cup win in extra time. In terms of head-to-heads under Erik ten Hag, Liverpool United, they've only lost once, Man United, and that was a 7-0 spanking.
Yeah.
But they have only lost once, so they stepped their game up against Liverpool, like you've said. Liverpool started the season well, 2-0 win on the weekend, fairly comfortable, and 2 gorgeous goals in terms of that Diaz's one-on-one and then Salah's little kind of dink over the keeper too. The United game on the weekend, in terms of you speaking about maybe wanting to take United at a bigger price, some of the defensive mistakes they're making, it's really not good. And BJ's mentioned the opening goal, so I'll take on the winning goal gladly. I've got a still up in front of me from the replay of the second goal, the João Pedro goal to win it. So let's say you're stood on the penalty spot looking at the goal. I've paused the replay here just before Adingra crosses the ball. There are 8 players inside the penalty box to the left of the penalty spot. 8 plus the goalkeeper, right? And then you've got 3 Brighton players bunched up at the back post just waiting for any kind of chip ball in the 95th minute, by the way, when, it's like it's backs to the wall, like you're defending and anything can kind of happen. You're trying to hold on desperately to that point away from home. You've just left 3 players at the back post. It's something that I don't think we can really blame Erik ten Hag for. Like these kind of things you learn when you're 8, 9, 10 years old, and then you kind of as a pro, and then you perfect it as a pro in your teenage years. So yeah, just those kind of defensive lapses in concentration just make me want to stay away from United, to be honest. But we know they step it up against this Liverpool team, so I don't know how keen I am to take United on at, what were they, minus 120 either. So I think really BJ's shout of over, was it 17.5 goals? Shots, sorry. I think that might be the way. That would be something. I think that might be the way to take it, because at the prices I'm not so keen. But yeah, the defensive mistakes we're seeing from United, really not good.
Yeah, that was fun. A good lucky win for us back in Brighton last weekend. No, we flip it. It's just a zigzag situation with United. We saw this early last year too. So we'll see. That definitely is the headliner for this match week. But there's a really good one to start things off on Saturday morning between Arsenal and Brighton. A title race 6-pointer as we go into match week 3 with Arsenal minus 300 at home. Brighton traveling 7-1. The draw is plus 425. BJ, I do want to ask you, like, as an Arsenal supporter, you do your best to stay away from betting against the team that you root for, which I commend.
Because they're so good, Michael.
Yeah, they are good. Betting against Arsenal has not been fun, but I do think I don't think I'd be lying if I were to say if this wasn't Arsenal playing Brighton here, if you kept the profile and switched the names with Liverpool or City, I think I would be pulling you over to Brighton here, because this looks like a situation where I would love to bet Brighton at this price with what I've seen against anybody. Like, I just am really impressed with how they came out of the gates. Once again, you can talk about quality competition, right? Everton has been a mess to start, but they did go on the road and just wallop them. Then they welcome United to the South Coast, take advantage of as Sam broke down, a defensive lapse in a spot where you just cannot have a defensive lapse. But like, they're just going to be dangerous at this kind of price. Like, this is a really good price on a team that has a really high ceiling, and there's so much chaos that they can bring to a match because of their speed on the wings and just the way they play. And we still don't understand all that much about what Fabian Hertzler is going to be able to do over the course of a long season, but the early returns are quite impressive. That's not what that kind of stuff I feel like keeps Mikel Arteta up at night, right? He wants to control everything. Really hard to do against Brighton, even at home. So I think Brighton's live here to cause perhaps the first early shock of the season.
Yeah, Arsenal has got some figuring out to do offensively from open play. So what Unai Emery did and why they kind of stifled Arsenal for a long time is he was essentially playing like 6 guys across the back line with his compact, obviously compact shape and high line, which just took away really any type of overload that Arsenal could do offensively. Basically forced Arsenal to say, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to play the ball over the top. And Arsenal just wasn't willing to do that and really couldn't do it effectively for most of the match. I have a couple, speaking of still shots, Sam, I have a still shot from the Brighton-Manchester United match. For the few times that Manchester United was building out of the back against Brighton, Hertzler was playing a pretty similar system. It was more like a 5-4-1, but it was very high line, very compact to reduce that space in between the lines. So if Arsenal really couldn't figure out how to do that against Aston Villa, saying that they're going to be able to do that against Brighton, I think is a bit naive. Now, they very well may create chances because, this is the third match now that Brighton is playing this type of system. So Arsenal could get through and create a couple chances. But the flip side of it is that, Brighton, the key in the Hertzler system is that single pivot player, because he uses a lot of different build-up formations. Usually it's splitting the center backs and having that single pivot. Weifer was injured for the match against United, and it looks like Billy Gilmore might be off to Napoli. So I'm not sure if Brighton's going to have a guy in that single pivot that's going to be able to be successful and allow Brighton to build up against Arsenal the way that they press high. And again, if you're going to try to play the ball long against Arsenal, well, they allowed the lowest long ball completion percentage of anybody in the Premier League last season. They're so good at winning second balls, so they make it so difficult on teams to actually create chances. I know everybody wants to overreact that Aston Villa created over 1 expected goal against Arsenal. Well, the 2 big chances they had that accumulated all of that, the Ollie Watkins miss in the first half would have been called back for a penalty, for a foul, without a doubt, if that ball would have been in the back of the net. And the second one was a deflection from Onana that went off the post and gave Watkins an easy chance in on net. So I wouldn't go and say like there's some type of defensive issue with Arsenal. There's not, because they're still defending wonderfully in transition. They're not letting you do anything on set pieces. And their high press is really forcing teams into a lot of long balls up the pitch. So I like under 3 here at even money. I think that the total is way too high here. I have around 2.5 goals projected. I think both teams are really going to have problems once they get to the final third. Brighton's going to have problems building up, and they're going to have to send a lot of long balls. And Arsenal's got to figure out if teams are going to play 5 or 6 at the back line and play a high line. They got to figure out a way to play through them. And so far, they have not shown that. So under 3 at even money for me.
Sitting on that 0-0 was a lot of fun, because I was like, oh, it's done when watching the 2 Watkins chances. But Got to the 66th minute. It was fun. A good fun sweat. I'll try to find one on this betting board. Sam, any interest here in Arsenal or Brighton? I think that this thing has some drama to it, so that's why it's leaning me towards the dogs.
I think you might be right. I'm not sure. This is more of a lean than anything. I've got both teams to score at -120 in front of me, and there's not many Premier League games where you can pick up both teams to score at -120 these days. Looking at the weekend slate, you've got Newcastle Spurs -278, -227 in United versus Liverpool. So yeah, this doesn't come around too often. And I know there'll be plenty out there, like BJ was saying, that'll probably be disinterested in a minus figure for both teams to score at the Emirates, but 53% of their home games landed both teams to score last season. 37% of Arsenal matches saw them keep a clean sheet. Obviously impressive, but it also leaves a little room for their travelling opponents to make their presence felt. Brighton have lost to an aggregate score of 8-0 in their last 3 meetings with Arsenal. So not ideal, but they've also scored in each of their first 3 games of the Hertzler era, including 4-0 in the EFL Cup last night. So Arsenal, yeah, they've waltzed through match day 1 and match day 2 without conceding, 2-0 in both games, including last weekend's trip to Aston Villa. And I know it is literally his job, but David Raya has had to bail Arsenal out more than once. They are fortunate that he's been able to make multiple world-class stops, but that luck, that fortune, that elite level goalkeeping, whatever you want to coin it, it's going to fall short at some point, and I'm hoping that rears its head on the weekend. You mentioned Ollie Watkins had a couple chances to score. Think he should have mentioned it in our match day 2 pod, that unbelievable outstretched arm against Wolves too. Yeah, there's been a few chances, and I think this Brighton team, from what we've seen, that they should really create a few goal scoring opportunities, and you would always expect Arsenal to score at home. So it's more of a price thing than anything. -120 on both teams to score in the Premier League, but don't really mind the sound of that as a lean.
All right, unfortunately, that means it's time to talk about Everton. They are +170 at home against Bournemouth, so they are
rising.
Oh God, I know. Bournemouth sitting +155. The draw here is +230. I don't know. Like we always have been for the better part of a calendar year now. We've been talking about there just being value on Everton according to the numbers, and it's going to be painful, and it has been painful, and we've been steering you in the wrong direction with most of those bets. But
have we? I mean, yes, they've lost, but
yeah, I guess I've been steering you wrong.
Most of them,
they cover, but
like, well, maybe Everton should have scored those 3 chances.
It would take you'd have to be a pretty brave soul to bet Everton here, Sam. Yeah. That's all I would say. Like I think that they're probably the right side in terms of value, but you'd still have to be a pretty brave soul.
No, exactly. Yeah. The only kind of points I've got down in front of me, because I'm not taking a bet in this game, is that, well, I've made no secret of being fully behind Bournemouth, but with the prices, I think it's gone too far, and now Everton are value. So if you have eyes and you've seen their start to the season, Everton, then you'll understand why I'm not too keen on getting behind them either. Opening up my Bet365, I was hoping maybe we'd get Bournemouth at a +0.25 maybe on the road, which you probably would have earlier on last season, but yeah, it's not to be now. So in terms of value, the bet is Everton, but yeah, you're brave if you take that on this week.
I'll put it this way. I think that, yes, I do think the value side is Everton. If we wanted to just like do this from a mathematical standpoint, where I kind of think the line is maybe now a little bit in range. Now, if you get Everton up into the +180, +190 range, then we can have a different discussion. But, Bournemouth, since November 11th, when they really kicked it on, was about a +0.2 XG differential per 90. And if we take Everton at about even money, we give Everton home field advantage, which is worth about 0.34 expected goals in the Premier League. You could make the case that Everton maybe should be a slight favorite here at home. I think for me, kind of going along with what Sam said, Everton needs to show me that they can be dangerous in transition before I decide to bet them again. They were dangerous on set pieces against Tottenham, without a doubt. But they got to show me something in transition where they can actually create a lot of chances. So this is a good match to do it because Bournemouth they were really open against Newcastle, and they allowed a lot of transition breaks against the Magpies. So Everton's got to show me something before we can back them again. But I'll be back on them eventually. But this is not the spot to do it.
Yeah, nice. Look at it this way: if you
They'll win
don't
this
bet,
match. By the way, they'll win this.
They
match
will win.
for sure.
Yeah, of course they'll win it. But if you don't bet Everton this week, that means you're going to have 3 weeks off from betting on Everton because we don't have a match for a while. So when you think about it, the potential of an Everton win or just getting those 3 weeks without having to get in bed with this team, which is more important to you? I think it's a pretty easy decision.
They're going to face Aston Villa out of the break too.
I know.
That's going to be an Everton bet.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I got nothing for this next one. Lean towards the favorite a little bit. That's Brentford. They're minus 134 and rising against Southampton, who've struggled out of the gates. One of a handful of teams without a point on the board. They are plus 350 traveling to the Brentford Community Stadium. The draw here is plus 290. But you two are both on the side of the Bees. We'll start with you, Sam.
Yeah, I think Brentford to win the game outright is a pretty good price, around minus 130, but I've gone for something a little different. Brentford win and most shots on Bet365, you can get that at plus 180. So Russell Martin, Southampton boss, in his post-match press conference after the Nottingham Forest fixture at the weekend said, we don't possess the individual quality at the top end of the pitch as they do in terms of Forest. And that was the big difference here today. So that's damning. Southampton had 5 attempts, 4 at home, by the way. 4 came outside the box. 3 of them were blocked and one and didn't trouble the goal. And then only 1 was on target, which the Forest keeper made a save from. So they didn't have one big chance in the game at home. On matchday 2, Southampton posted the lowest XG of any team, 0.14 against Forest. And what Russell Martin is saying about lacking quality up top, he's absolutely correct. So in Adam Armstrong and Ben Brereton Diaz, their strike partnership, they've got 2 championship strikers up front, hoping they're going to perform at Premier League level. And now they travel to Brentford and plan on outgunning Brian Mbeumo, Johan Visser, Kevin Schade, etc. Potentially Ivan Toney, but probably not. And you can get Brentford at minus 130 to get the job done. So it's the same story as Leicester for me at the minute. I think if Southampton opponents, if they can score 2 goals in a Premier League game, I just struggle to see how Southampton can conjure up enough to get anything from the game. And Brentford at home, they've got 2 goals in them. I'm pretty sure about that, especially against a newly promoted team like Southampton, who will try to knock the ball around and probably give you transitional opportunities. So I think Southampton, we saw that against Forest. I think they looked vulnerable against Forest for most of the game, actually. They were so easy to play through, and they had the ball for a lot of the game, but they were so easy to play through. And Forest repeatedly turned defence and transitional opportunities into attack straight away in 1 or 2 passes. It was 1-0 to Forest, but it should have been more. The underlying data, 0.14 XG to Southampton and 2.45 XG to Forest. And Forest also outshot Southampton by 23-5 in Southampton's own backyard. So I see no reason why it won't be similar at the G-Tech Stadium. Brentford to win most shots, plus 180, Bet365. If you're keen to play it a little bit safer, you could get Brentford or draw and most shots at minus 116. I'll like them both.
Here's a stat that I think tells you all you need to know about Southampton. In the second half against Nottingham Forest, they controlled 70% of the possession and got outshot 11-1.
Yeah.
Like the thing is, like I went back and rewatched that match. They actually looked like pretty good through the first couple phases of buildup. Like they were knocking the ball around well. Nottingham Forest was sitting in a mid block. They weren't providing much resistance. And then once you get in the final third, there's just nothing. And I mean, it's a very similar team. Like Sam said, you're going to play in Brentford. They're just as good in a low defensive block or even in a mid block as Nottingham Forest is. So how is Southampton going to play through them and really do that? Sam also mentioned that Southampton's very vulnerable in transition. So far this season, 5 counterattacking shots through 2 matches. That's the most anybody's allowed so far in the Premier League. And last season in the Championship, they allowed the most counterattacking shots per 90 minutes of anybody. Just shows how vulnerable they are. Additionally, Southampton allowed well over 1 expected goal on set pieces to Nottingham Forest. And of course, Brentford is always good on set pieces. Last season created the 2nd most expected goals off of them, behind only Everton. So, I mean, I think Brentford is severely undervalued here. I like them at -130. I agree with Sam.
Okay. Next up is Ipswich and Fulham. Ipswich is starting to rise a little bit. I think this price is getting to a point where it's playable. They're plus 200 at home against a Fulham team that is plus 130. The draw is plus 240. Fulham have acquitted themselves pretty well to start the season. Decent showing against Man United. They get the win against Leicester in a game that they edged in the second half. I do think this is a little trickier than these odds suggest. So I got no interest in Fulham, Sam. We'll put it that way. I'm starting to lean towards the Tractor Boys here.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I've gone for over 2.5 goals, but it was between that and Fulham to win. But like I've said a few times, I'm a bit of a coward, so I'm just going for the smaller price. So Ipswich, they played Liverpool and City to open up the season. It's the first time that Kieran McKenna has lost 2 games on the bounce as Ipswich boss, but it's a real cruel opening 2 games. They've scored once at the Etihad through Sammy Smodic, new signing, and in those 2 matches they've amassed 0.56 XG combined, smallest total in the whole division. 19 teams have put up more, but obviously the rest haven't. Just play Liverpool and City on the bounce. So I think these prices, I think these underlying figures might be skewing the prices a little. And I've got no data to back this up. But Ipswich and these players at Premier League level are obviously unknowns. But what I like here is I think Fulham will arrive, fancy all 3 points. And I think Ipswich will look at this as one of the Premier League games they can really take to their opposition. And I think there's potentially 3 points here. I think Ipswich might have to soak up pressure, play on the counter and in transition, but they can do that. I've seen them do it often in the Championship. They've got players to do that. Amari Hutchinson will run all day and get you up the pitch. Sammy Smodic is cut from a similar cloth. He'll do the same through the middle and he'll run the channels if you want him to. Like I said, no Premier League data to hand, but in the Championship, I mentioned it on Matchday 1, Ipswich scored 59 goals in 23 home games, more than Leicester, Leeds, Southampton. Ipswich averaged 3.96 goals per 90 at home, nearly 4 goals a game. So they are box office at Portman Road. This over 2.5 goals shout might fall to its knees, but from what I know about Ipswich, what I know about Kieran McKenna and these players, they'll devise a game plan to win every home game, and through that they'll score goals, and through that they'll also be susceptible at the back. So this might be one of the shootouts. It might fall to his knees, but over 2.5 goals in the Premier League at -120, thought it was a pretty good price.
Okay. Forest and Wolves up next. I'm leaning towards the draw here. BJ, Forest is plus 105 at home. Really impressive start to the season, I think, from Forest. And I also think they're just getting overlooked by everybody, considering what Nuno has done with them since he took over. Like, it's just a much more solid mid-table team than I think the market gives credit for. They are plus 105 against Wolves. Wolves plus 240. The draw is plus 250 here. You are leaning towards Forest here. I think this one could be a little trickier, and given how these two teams can play, the draw is definitely something that I'm interested here. But what do you have for us on the tricky trees?
I actually like Nottingham Forest here, plus 105 at home. We already mentioned how impressive they were against Southampton in their second match, but what is most impressive about them, I think, is their versatility out of possession. Like, they're obviously a very good transition team. They're obviously a very good team that can sit in the mid block. But if they feel that they can press an opponent high and cause a lot of issues, they will do it. Last season in the 2-2 draw with Wolves at the City Ground, They won the match on XG 1.9-1. But the most important stat from that match was Nottingham Forest had 21 high recoveries. Wolves just kept trying to play out of the back, and Nottingham Forest deployed a man-to-man press and continually was turning them over and over and over again. If you watched Wolves versus Chelsea, well, Wolves still has a lot of difficulties playing against a man-to-man press. So I think Nottingham Forest can cause them a lot of problems, especially with their out-of-possession stuff. And the other problem with Wolves is that, when they get into a negative game state, like you saw against Chelsea, and they have to be the ones that come out and press a team, they're not very good at doing it. They're very good at sitting in that mid type of block, but I think Gary O'Neill desperately wants to make Wolves a team that can control matches a little bit more, especially matches like this. So that leaves them in kind of a very vulnerable type position. And then there's the other aspect of, if you just look at the underlying data of these two teams since Nuno has taken over, Nottingham Forest is drastically a better team than Wolves is. In the 21 matches that he's been in charge, the 23 matches that he's been in charge, minus 4 actual goal differential, plus 6.7 expected goal differential, whereas Wolves has a minus 16.8 expected goal differential over that exact same time frame. So Nottingham Forest is drastically a better team, and I think they're a little bit undervalued here, especially at home, where they play so much better than they do on the road. So I like the price on them at plus 105.
It's been a funky start for Wolves too. Ipswich is probably the only other team that I feel like we've learned less about through 2 matches, considering the opponents that we've seen Wolves play, Arsenal, and then just an insane match against Chelsea. So another team that I'm just trying to figure out at this point, and I don't feel like I have a good feel, but it would be a draw for me if I had to play anything here. Leicester and Villa up next. Leicester plus 350 at home. Villa traveling at minus 138. The draw is plus 280. I thought a pretty good effort from Villa, all things considered, against Arsenal. Ollie Watkins finishes. Who knows where we're at. The defense did look leaky against West Ham, and I don't know if they've sorted that out yet, Sam, but you think that they could get that all taken care of and do a job here on the road against Leicester?
The defence looks a bit leaky, but I'm not sure what Leicester's front line is up to. I've probably repeated myself in the last few weeks. I'll quickly start off with 2 things that have happened in the last day or so. Wout Faes, Leicester's centre-half, he's reportedly handed in a transfer request. Leicester's main central defender, so they're really light as it is, so that's a bit of a headache for Cooper, obviously. And also last night, Leicester hosted Tranmere at the King Power on Tuesday night, so we're recording Wednesday morning. They won 4-0. Cooper started Wout Faes, Skip, Winks, Ndidi, Mavididi, Ayew. So some will have needed minutes, but some could have done without that extra Tuesday night game ahead of Saturday's kickoff. And at this level, that extra percentage gain from Villa's rest could well be the difference. But just in general, for Leicester, it feels like opportunities are really going to be few and far between in open play for the foreseeable in the Premier League until they get players through the door. And we've only got a few days left of the transfer window, so that's a concern. Of their 10 shots in the 2-1 loss to Fulham, 6 of their 10 shots came directly from a set piece. Leicester's equaliser was from a towering Wout Faes header from a corner. In terms of phases of play in possession, just 33% of Leicester's passes have come in the opposition's half in the opening 2 games this season. That's the lowest percentage in the division. And by watching both of the games, it really did feel like that too. I thought Villa looked decent against Arsenal. Watkins has had a nightmare, really. He dragged his first attempt to the left of the post after Villa pressed effectively. BJ will say it was a foul, but I'm not so sure. And then another David Raya save. That David Raya save was unbelievable, really. But I want my striker to be scoring that. Fair play to Raya, but you've got to be doing better there for me. Watkins is actually on a 7-game scoreless streak, and that's his longest in the division under Emery. So that's interesting. That's something to watch out for. But since Unai Emery has come in to the Premier League, since his first away match in charge for Villa in November 2022, only City and Arsenal have won more away games than Villa. Before the Arsenal visit, Villa have already gone away from home got a win on the first game of the season against West Ham away from home. New manager in the dugout there, new big money signings, new front line, and they left there with all 3 points. So if they can go and do that at West Ham, then I'm pretty sure against this Leicester outfit with limited options up top, I'm pretty sure they can do it again at a fairly good price. And I've said all that, and I've realised I haven't actually said my bet, which is Aston Villa minus 0.75 Asian handicap at plus money, plus 101.
Okay, let's flip it to West Ham and City. The Hammers plus 600, City minus 240. The draw is plus 375. Congrats to anyone who bet Ipswich Town to score first against City. That's a great bet. But then it got away from them pretty quickly. City, I don't know if they've been at the races quite yet, but they don't really have to be. And they shouldn't have too many issues scoring against this West Ham team, which has also looked leaky in defense. I've got nothing here, Sam, but you think that this could be another opportunity for Pep's men just to run rampant, huh?
Yeah, just a bit of a lean, really. When you can get City on side at a fairly decent price, I think you've got to explore it a little bit. We've got Ilkay Gundogan back and in contention to feature here, which is a bit of fun. I did not expect
Amazing,
that.
Yeah. That was awesome.
No, yeah. He's one of my favourite players. I think he's brilliant. So it's nice to see him back in the Premier League. So not a major fancy, but Manchester City to win and under 5 goals comes out at minus 110. The concern for that bet is clearly that City runs away with this and puts up 4 or 5 themselves, which is an obvious concern. City have scored at least 2 goals in their last 7 head-to-heads against West Ham. The win and under 5 selection has landed in 7 of 10, with 2 games being drawn and 1 actually being 5-0 to Man City. So this is a fixture that Manchester City dominates. There's a new coach, new signings knocking about London Stadium, as we just touched on, which might alter the course of this fixture for the foreseeable. But if I was to lean towards a pick after City's pretty good start to the season without their key midfielder in Rodri, it'd probably be City to win and under 4.5 goals at a fairly palatable price.
I think West Ham under 8.5 shots is kind of interesting. And if it gets to a little bit, it starts sitting at like minus 140 right now, which is kind of a steep price to pay. But I'll save what I'm going to say about Crystal Palace. But West Ham kind of got dominated and got the field tilted on them by Crystal Palace. City's going to probably do the exact same thing. And the Ipswich match, Michael, was very evident of Pep like 2 or 3 years ago, where it's just, we're just going to kill the game. We're just going to not let you have the ball. You're never going to get a transition opportunity. We're just going to hold it, and we're just going to pass the ball around until you actually win the ball off of us. And so far, what I've seen from West Ham is, well, they're not very good at pressing, just like they were last season. So how are they going to get the ball and win it off of City? Now, they're much more dangerous in transition than Ipswich is. You saw that against Crystal Palace with Jared Bowen scoring in transition. And they can definitely maybe get a goal here against Manchester City. But in the 2 matches that they faced off against City last season, first match they took 3 shots. In the second match they took, which was the final match of the season, they took 6 shots. If they get tilted like they did against Crystal Palace, I don't see how they're getting to 9 shots here, especially if Rodri's back and City's able to control things more. And the Gundogan thing is very good for City because they needed a box crashing threat. Just everybody, they haven't really had that with Kovacic, so now they can have somebody in a more advanced role that can actually provide not only shots but creation aspect, whereas Kovacic really couldn't do that, and Rodri had to be the one to do it. So allows Rodri to play more of a defensive role, which I think ultimately makes City better. But here, I think I'll probably end up on West Ham under 8.5 shots.
Yeah, really, really happy for City to get Gundogan and back in.
Yeah.
Good things rarely happen to that club. So nice to see them catch a break every once in a while.
We'll see. We'll see in September, Michael, if good things continue to happen in that club.
Something tells me they will. Sunday, I love the 3 Sunday fixtures are awesome. I think all 3 of them are really fun to bet. We already talked about United and Liverpool. Now let's talk about Chelsea and Palace. Chelsea minus 175, Palace plus 425. The draw here is plus 333. I know the start to the season has not been great for Palace at all, but things could not have gone better for you if you wanted to bet Crystal Palace in this match last weekend, which we all I think, wanted to do and try to take Chelsea on. Chelsea runs riot in a really strange game against Wolves. Palace falls, as BJ says, to West Ham in a game that they deserved more from. They lose 2-1 to Brentford in their opener, another game that was kind of in the balance as well. So now you're getting a ballooned price on Crystal Palace on the road at Chelsea. I think it's a great bet, plus 425. They are absolutely live to do this. You look at what they did under Glasner over the second half of last year. It was really impressive. We know that this Chelsea team still, despite that win against Wolves, is a bit of a mess. That one win, especially in the fashion that it came, does not solve everything going on there. And Palace are just they were overrated to start the season. Like, I think we all could agree that. Now they're back to being underrated after 2 losses. So I love Palace here, BJ, plus 425.
Yeah, Chelsea. So I think Chelsea did open up at a decent price here in terms of at least a fair price. They were minus 130 when they opened up 10 days ago. Now we're sitting at minus 170 because they scored 6 goals against Wolves. But here's the thing, is I think that Chelsea still has some very, very clear out of possession issues that Wolves just really couldn't exploit that I think Crystal Palace really can. They're way too aggressive with their high pressing. They go in a man-to-man fashion. They leave the middle of the pitch wide open at times. If you watch Palace under Glasner, they are very good at building out of the back, and they are very good at playing through the middle of the pitch, which I think can cause Chelsea a lot of problems. They also are very good at finding the overloads where they need to be found. You know, if you watch the Chelsea match versus City just kept overloading the wide areas. They were building up in 3-1-6. They were getting 3v2s or 4v3s out wide and creating chances on that over and over and over again. That is something Palace can exactly do here against Chelsea. The worry here for Palace is, okay, let's say that Chelsea, they're at home. Let's just say they control 60 to 65% of the ball. Can Palace play in that type of scenario? Well, they're getting somebody back that I think helps them play in that type of scenario, and it's Czech Decore. He started in their EFL Cup match against Norwich City. He was injured all of last season. 2 seasons ago, he had 130 tackles plus interceptions, which was the 6th best mark in the Premier League. What he also allows is Adam Wharton to play a more advanced role, which is where he is truly at his best. You know, a lot of times they've had to have Will Hughes as their more advanced type of number 8 midfielder, whereas Wharton has had to have more defensive cover. Well, now you allow Wharton to play his best position and have Czech Decore as that defensive cover. Now, what I will tell people is, you know, as you're listening to this, I think you can wait until Sunday and to actually bet Crystal Palace, because a couple of things might happen. I think people will continue to bet Chelsea, and Mark Gahey might leave by the time we reach Sunday. You know, there's rumors that Newcastle has upped it to 70 million now, which is kind of a crazy price, honestly. I'm not sure if he's worth that much. He's a very good defender. I don't know if 70 million. So we'll see if that actually happens. But if Gahey is in there and Crystal Palace has all of their players available, Chelsea is definitely overvalued. I mean, they scored their 6 goals off of 0.7 expected goals against Wolves. Like, it's not like they created high quality chances. So I think Crystal Palace is definitely alive here. They're a very versatile team, both in and out of possession. They can cause Chelsea a lot of problems. So I like them at +1 at minus 110.
Come on, Sam.
Yeah, what? I have no bet, but in terms of Crystal Palace right now, exactly like BJ just said, they've lost Joachim Andersen. They might be losing Mark Gahey. They've lost Elise, obviously, early on in the window. They've got Matete up front, who looks a bit leggy from the Olympics. Kamada's come in, looks decent. Eze's still there. Just right now at the minute, I think it's a bit of an uphill battle for Glasner and that Palace team. They need a few more reinforcements. I'm just not sold on wanting to get behind them, even if they do play a Chelsea team, which is, don't even know how you describe them. Like, I don't think anyone saw, like, was it 6-2 against the Wolves? I don't think anyone saw that coming. So I don't know where this Chelsea team are at. I can't really pin them at the minute. They may be absolutely brilliant. I'm kind of leading towards the other side of it that they're probably not. So yeah, this game in general is just one that I'd rather steer clear from, as boring as that is.
It shouldn't be boring when Newcastle and Spurs meet. Both of these teams are very happy to go forward. Not so fussed about defending, Newcastle is a very, very slight favorite. It's basically a pick 'em on the three-way line. It's plus 145 on the Magpies. Spurs traveling plus 150. The draw is plus 300. Spurs coming off of a win over an Everton team that just wasn't very good at all. So read into that what you will. Newcastle, it's been a disjointed start to the season. Obviously, the first win against Southampton was gritty, considering the red card. Then they are a little lucky, I would say, against Bournemouth to earn the draw, 1-1. But we were really high on this team coming into the year. There's some injury issues that we have to sort through for this match, which perhaps change things a little bit just in the immediate term. I don't think I'm going to change my tune on Newcastle in the big picture at all. This match, though, I think is just one that everyone is going to be rushing to the window to back something similar, whether it's the overs or team to win from behind, something where the match is just kind of back and forth and crazy. I maybe want to throw together a fun exact score. 3-2 Newcastle is 20-1, 2-2 11-1, something like that. The point is goals, BJ.
Mm-hmm. I love over 3.5 here. I really do. If there is a team out there that can be Ange Postecoglou's kryptonite, it's definitely Newcastle. And you saw that towards the end of last season when they hammered them at St. James Park 4-0. That Tottenham team was full strength, by the way. All their regular starters were available. Obviously, Solanke is going to miss this match. So it's pretty much the same starting 11 that Tottenham had last season that they're going to come to St. James Park as well. And what kept happening is Tottenham, when they build out of their 2-3-5, I mentioned this many times, but they invert Udogie and Porro into the middle of the pitch, which obviously allows them to overload, puts a lot of pressure on the opposing defense. But you also leave Romero and Van de Ven on islands. And against a lot of teams in the Premier League, they are good enough to mop up those type of transition attacks. But not Newcastle. Because what kept happening is Newcastle was getting either 2v2s or 1v1s with Ishak or Gordon against those two defenders, and they punished them over and over and over again. In that match, Newcastle had 7 counterattacking shots. That is tied for the most in a Premier League match last season, tied with when Newcastle got beat 4-2 by Liverpool, and Liverpool put up 7 expected goals. So they definitely can do a lot out of possession. I think what's interesting is what they will do. You mentioned the injuries, Michael. Lascelles, Boatman, and now Schär is suspended as well. So they went with a makeshift center back pairing of Emil Kraft and Dan Burn against Bournemouth over the weekend, conceded almost 2 expected goals. What we've seen from Newcastle towards the end of last season was we're just going to go 4-3-3. We're with our high press. We know we're more physical than you, so we're just going to, take it as what it is. We might get beat over the top. I think they should do that here against Tottenham. And when they did do it in the first half of that 4-0 defeat, that 4-0 win, they really forced Tottenham into a lot of long balls, and their physicality really took over. The other end of the spectrum is, okay, midway through the season last year, where they got beat pretty badly by Tottenham because they were going through a lot of injuries, similar to how they are now, and fixtures were piling up with Champions League. So they were playing a passive 4-5-1, and Tottenham was just breaking them down over and over again and created close to 4 expected goals. So whatever type of out of possession structure Newcastle tries to do, it's going to lead to goals. So I really like over 3.5 goals here. Both the first meeting had 4.5 expected goals. The second meeting had 3.6. So Newcastle, they're so good offensively at St. James Park. They average 2.4 expected goals per 90 there. So I love the I love this over 3.5. It was getting down closer to even money, but I'll do it at -105.
And you're going to take it to the next level here, Sam.
Yes, both teams to score both halves at 6-1, which is a bit of fun. So Spurs is going to come and have a real good go at St. James's Park, despite the 4-0 loss last season and despite the 6-1 loss the season before, which was under Antonio Conte's interim assistant. So I don't know how much we can go off that. Last season, Spurs' 3.68 goals average away from home was the 3rd highest in the division. Their expected goals for per 90 away figure of 1.52 was only bettered by the 3 teams who finished in the top 3. So they will get at Newcastle, and rest assured, especially after the last 2 instances, which Eddie Howe and the majority of the squad are still there, fresh in the memory, Newcastle will also like their chances. So Newcastle versus Tottenham, interesting stat, is the most played fixture in Premier League history to never finish 0-0 out of 58 games. So I know you like your 0-0 scorelines, Michael.
It's 25 to 1.
25 to 1.
That's
yeah.
too
What do you
short.
reckon?
Come on, you got to go 50 to 1 for that.
I know, that's what I was thinking. I was hoping to get I feel like last year for matches like this, the bookmakers would just slap a 33 to 1 on it and go to bed at night and just be like, we'll just make it 33. So we're getting a little short here. That said, I mean, as we get closer, I'll probably have something.
Yeah, I thought you might, right? So yeah, I mean, last weekend it didn't really click for Newcastle away at Bournemouth. It felt like Isak was left to do a lot of the work by himself up top. He was battling all game and just felt that he needed a bit more up there, a bit more help up there to encourage a few periods of sustained Newcastle pressure. Harvey Barnes come on, he's back from injury now. Great player. I think Newcastle will really benefit from him on the side on the left and Anthony Gordon on the right. Isak down the middle. I think that's such a good front three. But yeah, Bournemouth are really tough to play against. We know that Newcastle won't be the only top 6 hopeful to come close to losing at the Vitality this season, that's for sure. But it's a different story for Newcastle at home, much more comfortable in front of home support. And Newcastle have scored at least once in each of their last 20 Premier League home games. So Newcastle are good for a go. You'd say Tottenham are too. And I think this is a game that could well descend into chaos, which we love. The line here over 3.5, BJ's having it. For me, it's personal preference. I just don't really like the thought of needing full goals to pay me out at around even. So usually when there's a game like this where you expect goals and you think there may be a fair few, I'll look to try and get something at a bigger price. So both teams are scoring both halves is usually up around 10 to 1, 11 to 1. We're not getting that, obviously. But 6 to 1, fairly short for the market. But if we expect to see a fair few goals, then it may well come close at a pretty good price.
Okay, that's the Premier League all wrapped up for this match week. We'll move on to Europe. We'll hand it over to BJ in a second. Before we do that, and then get to championship bets as well as our underdogs and best bets. Reminder that Wondergoal is presented by Bet365, and Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boosts with them than anyone else. Every day they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays, and they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for the biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out the boost and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. You must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, New Jersey, Ohio, North Carolina, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. And if you or anyone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. Okay, BJ, what do you got around the rest of the continent?
Yeah, let's just go Bundesliga. Bochum, Gladbach over 2.5 at -145. Last season, both of these matches saw 4+ goals and 4+ expected goals as well. Gladbach looks like they are going to lose their star midfielder Manu Kone to AC Milan. It looked like they found a pretty good striker in Kleindienst. Excuse me if I got that name wrong. From Heidenheim. Scored a goal against Leverkusen. Looks like he's a very good transition striker, which is what this match really should be. It should be very back and forth with a lot of chances at both ends. So I like over 2.5 at -145 in that match. In Serie A, Cagliari, Lecce, both teams to score at even money. Cagliari is under Davide Nicola, who was managing Empoli for about second half of the season last year. They were a bottom 5 defensive team under him. They should continue to trend that way and be a little bit worse defensively. Lecce was one of the worst defensive teams in Serie A last season, conceded well over 2 expected goals per 90 minutes. So I think both teams to score at even money is a little bit too low. And then in Spain, Valencia, draw no bet, +105 at home against Villarreal. The first 3 Villarreal matches. Looks like defense is going to be optional for them this season. Conceded almost 3 expected goals to Celta Vigo. Was conceded close to 20 shots against Sevilla. Valencia has not looked great to start the season, but when they faced Villarreal last season at home, they dominated them on expected goals, 2.8 to 0.5. They've been a much better defensive team under Ruben Baraja, who's taken over on February 14th of last season. So I think draw no bet at plus 105, especially being at home, I think is severely undervalued, especially with Villarreal losing a lot of key players, including Sorloth, who scored 23 goals for them last season. So Villarreal draw no bet at plus 105 for me in Spain.
Okay, then over to the championship, Sam. What do you got?
So Stoke versus my beloved Plymouth Argyle. I'm going for Stoke City minus 0.25.
No.
Yeah, I am.
No.
I'm really sorry. Yeah, it's got to be done. Minus 110. We're 3 games into the championship season. 1 horrendous loss, 2 well-fought draws. And I'm pretty concerned that when the bigger boys arrive, they're going to do a number on us. And although many people in the fan base probably won't agree, Stoke are one of the bigger boys. They took Argyle's head coach last season, Steven Schumacher. They spend the kind of money that Argyle can only dream of spending. And going off performances, Stoke have been hit and miss too this season, just like Argyle. They dispatch a young Middlesbrough team 5-0 in the cup. Impressive. That scoreline might flatter them, but plenty of counter-attacking opportunities, swift play in transition, front-footed football, everything Schumacher stands for, and everything that should hurt Argyle on the weekend if it rears its head. So I've just seen reports before coming onto the podcast that a tweet from Fabrizio Romano that Burnley have bid for Morgan Whittaker, probably Argyle's best player. Yeah, to be honest, I've been resigned to it all summer. I always thought he'd leave in the window, but it's the 28th of August. So if he goes now or in the coming days, then it's a nightmare, isn't it? And it happens every transfer window to multiple clubs. We're going to struggle to get reinforcements in, and definitely going to struggle to get someone in of his quality. I don't think it will happen, basically. So for this game on the weekend, we might be without our best player. And taking all that into consideration, and despite the slight uptick in performance and results from Argyle, I think Stoke, with the half draw on our side, get half your stake back if it ends in a draw. I think that's probably the way to go in the championship this weekend.
All right, it only took you 3 weeks to bet against your team here on the show, so welcome aboard. All right, on Underdog. Now, like I said, this one's going to pop out at 125 to 1. BJ, you can get us started.
Yeah, let's go Crystal Palace 4-1 against Chelsea. I already spoke about them earlier, but Crystal Palace can cause a lot of problems to Chelsea that Wolves really couldn't. Wolves is not a good team of building on the back, so Chelsea's man-to-man high press really caused them a lot of problems, forced them into a lot of long balls. But Crystal Palace is very good as a build-up team under Glasner. They'll be able to play through the middle of the pitch where Wolves couldn't. They're also getting Czech Decore back, who 2 years ago had 130 tackles plus interceptions, which was 6th most in the Premier League. He'll allow Adam Wharton to play a more advanced role. And it's really just an inflated price on Chelsea, who just scored 6 goals against Wolves. But those 6 goals only had an total XG rating of 0.7. So it was a lot of low-quality chances that Chelsea scored. So I think we're getting a inflated price here on Chelsea, which creates value on Crystal Palace. So I like them at 4-1.
Okay. The biggest underdog on the board at the time of recording is Brighton Hove Albion, despite the fact that they're 2-0 and have looked really impressive to start the season. And we know that the team has plenty of upside. The problem is they're playing at Arsenal. So that's why the price is where it is. But I'm going to do it. I think 7-1 is a really good price. A lot of times when we get to this section of the show, I talk about betting against a team when they're a big favorite. This time I'm betting on one. I concede that Arsenal is really good, one of the best teams in Europe, perhaps the second best team in the continent. But Brighton is really good too, and I think that the ceiling is high. I'm all in on this Seagulls team. I think that they'll cause at least one of these major upsets this season, so why not get started here in August against Arsenal? Sam, what do you got?
Ipswich plus 200, and I have no data to back this up. You cannot quantify the effect a newly promoted crowd will give you as a percentage. You can't put down on a spreadsheet the enthusiasm behind a newly promoted player's performance and want to prove themselves in the Premier League. So this is from the gut, I suppose, which the data nerds will absolutely hate. But I think Ipswich can spring a surprise here. They can cause this Fulham team real problems. Not only did they score away against City, which is no mean feat, obviously, but they were the better team at home against Liverpool for the first 45 minutes. They pressed well and they showed they provided a real threat in terms of carrying the ball up the field. So I think if you catch Fulham on an off day and you create a few goal scoring opportunities, we've seen in their championship campaign last season that they can score goals at home. Ipswich averaged 1.79 XG per 90 at Portman Road in 2023-24. So for me, this has all the makings of a potential upset at plus 200.
Wonderful. Okay, best bet for the Premier League this weekend. Sam, you can go first here.
Best bet. I'm shocked at the price on Brentford, minus 130. I see no real reason why they don't outscore this Southampton team, who Russell Martin, as we said earlier, went on record after the game to say they just don't have the type of firepower that Nottingham Forest does. And it'll be exactly the same here. So nothing changes. Away from home, Brentford without Ivan Toney probably, but with Mbeumo, Visser, Sade to name just three. If the home side gets 2 goals, then that may well be enough, as Southampton rely on the likes of Armstrong and Ben Brereton Diaz to start banging in goals at this level, something which might not come so frequently this season.
Last week, my best bet was Brighton against Manchester United. This week, I'm going with Manchester United on the money line against Liverpool. Betting is a fickle beast. I think that this United team, if they set up the way that I'm imploring them to do, which is just sit back and relax, absorb as much pressure as you can, and hit Liverpool on the transition. They're a live underdog here at home. I do think the market is a little carried away with the price on Liverpool as an odds-on favorite at Old Trafford. It's only been 2 matches under Arne Slot, and they came against Ipswich and Brentford at home, so it's not a surprise to see them sitting with an unblemished record. So they'll have to show me a little bit more before they justify this kind of price at United, who I know has their own flaws, and I'll likely be betting against them next week. So, but for now, it's United for me as my favorite bet, BJ.
I'm going to go with Newcastle and Tottenham.
Yeah, it's the best bet section. Yep.
Just check. All right, just
yep.
checking.
Best bet, baby.
You'll get used to it, Sam. Newcastle, Tottenham, over 3.5 at minus 105. This should be a very fun back and forth type match with a lot of chances at both ends, specifically by how both these teams play. So Tottenham really wants to build out of the back in their 2-3-5, but when they went to St. James Park last year, Newcastle caused them all sorts of problems with their high press, especially in the first half, created a lot of easy transition opportunities. Newcastle for the match had 7 counterattacking shots, which is tied for the most of any Premier League match last season. Tottenham is very vulnerable because they invert their fullbacks in possession, so they leave Romero and Van de Ven on islands. Anthony Gordon, Ishak should have great days when they get 2v2 or 1v1 type situations, just like they did in that previous meeting. And if Newcastle decides to press high, well, that's going to create a lot of transition opportunities if Tottenham is able to build through their pressure. But either way, it creates a very fun back and forth type match with 2 teams that are very comfortable playing in that high event type style. So I like the value on over 3.5 at minus 105.
All right, that wraps up this episode of Wondergoal. Thank you for listening and rating, reviewing, subscribing. Thank you to our sponsors, Bet365. Thank you to our producers, Noah, Dave, Matt on the back end. We will see you again in a couple weeks. Enjoy the soccer this weekend. Enjoy the international break. Best of luck with all your bets.